Well, good evening, East Alabama and West Georgia. It is 7:01 p.m. Central, 8:01 p.m. Eastern. It is Wednesday, September 25th, 2024, on Dr. Don's Weather, and here we are talking about a major hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico that is headed toward the northern Gulf. Going to make landfall now somewhere around Apalachicola with the latest track update information that we received late this afternoon. It looked like we're back to Apalachicola. 48 hours ago, this thing had wandered, the track at least, the forecast track, had wandered on off to the east to south of Tallahassee, but now the last several updates we've slowly seen it trend back to the left or back to the west. And now we're back to that original point that we were talking about when all this started several days ago of landfall being right there at Apalachicola. What has really changed since last night when we did this is the forecast intensity of Helene at landfall. It is now being predicted to potentially be a Category 4 at landfall. And I have to tell you that there are a handful of models out there that's suggesting even Category 5 at landfall, awfully close to Apalachicola, Florida. And then tracking up into extreme southwest Georgia, and eventually turning back to the north-northwest and pretty much following the Alabama-Georgia state line. Last night we were looking at this. The track was a little bit further to the east and was turning north up there around Atlanta and then back up toward Chattanooga. But now things have changed a bit and the track has shifted back to the left. So this brings more of East Alabama into play and West Georgia. Understand, and we talked about this extensively last night, anytime you're dealing with a hurricane along the track of the center of circulation and to the right is the dirty side of the storm. That's where all of the wind, most of the rain, and the tornado threat typically is to the right of the center of circulation. Yesterday at this time, the track was far enough into Georgia. East Alabama wasn't going to be affected that much. And you're still not going to get hurricane conditions, but that track has shifted further back to the west, so that brings East Alabama, West Georgia into play now, where you could certainly see some tropical storm-force gusty winds. As a matter of fact, the National Weather Service now has included the easternmost tier of counties in Alabama in that tropical storm warning that went out this afternoon. And, of course, all of West Georgia under that tropical storm warning as well. We have inland hurricane warnings all the way now up north of Albany, Georgia, pretty much even with Columbus, Georgia, back across the state of Georgia, across the southern part of the state. So this is somewhat unprecedented. I don't think we've ever, I know that we've never had a tropical storm warning up here in North Georgia. Inland tropical storm warnings, watches, and hurricane warning and watches inland is something the National Weather Service and the Hurricane Center just started doing a couple of 2-3 years ago. So this is, we're embarking on ground we've never been on here before. I don't know, I can't remember for sure, but I don't think East Alabama's ever been under a tropical storm warning either. So let's talk a little bit about what that means. Right now, it looks like that we are going to be looking at wind gusts 40 to 50 miles per hour possible Thursday night through noon on Friday. And that's not going to be consistent or sustained winds across East Alabama and West Georgia. Your sustained winds are probably going to be more in the 20 to 25 mile per hour category, but an occasional gust to 40, maybe even 50 miles per hour, certainly plausible across East Alabama. Even you folks back off to the west that are not under the tropical storm warning, I'm talking about Clay County, down into Tallapoosa and west, you're not under the warning, but you're going to have gusty and breezy conditions there as well. And understand, people, with all of this rain that we've received today and will continue to receive tonight, especially over here in Georgia, the ground is completely saturated. It's like taking a sponge and filling that sponge up with water. You know, it comes a point there where the sponge can't take on any more water, and so the water starts running off. Well, that's what's going to take place here. All of the rain that we've had today, and we have not even opened the hurricane gift package yet. This was just the stocking stuff here with the rain that we've had so far. With all of the saturation, it's not going to take much wind at all for some trees to fall. So I would expect to see at least sporadic outages with power across East Alabama and West Georgia. And the further west you go, the further east that you go into Georgia, certainly the further south you go, you're going to start to see more widespread tree damage and power outage. And this is going to be unprecedented for several different reasons. One, we've never seen inland tropical products like this. And two, this is going to, at least in the state of Georgia, this storm is going to adversely affect every square inch of the state of Georgia. And I don't know that we've ever been through anything like this before. Of course, we had Hurricane Opal back in the 90s. We had Alberto, that was a flooding storm. We had Irma, that was a wind storm that caused a lot of issues across Alabama and Georgia. But I don't know that we've ever had a hurricane that has literally touched every square inch of the state of Georgia, and that's what we're looking at with this storm. And the entire state of Alabama is going to feel some effects from this, but you know, West Alabama is just going to be breezy. You get into central Alabama, it may be real breezy. You get over into East Alabama, then you may experience some tropical storm force winds when we get into the height of this thing. So when is the height of this thing? I think we start to feel the wind increasing throughout the day tomorrow. It'll start out in the morning with just a light breeze. By the time we get to noon or 2 or 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, it'll be breezy and a little gusty from time to time. And then as the sun falls tomorrow evening, it's going to slowly start to increase in speed. We're talking about the wind. Rain will probably be with us most of the day tomorrow because we have this front that's stalling out across Alabama and Georgia. That's the front that brought us all the rain today. And then as the night goes along, the rain and the wind will slowly start to increase. And I think probably after 10 p.m. tomorrow night, across East Alabama and West Georgia, we start to get into the height of this thing. And I think from about 10, 11, maybe even midnight tomorrow night, all the way through mid-morning Friday, maybe noon Friday, will be the window of opportunity for the height of this effects that we're going to receive off of the hurricane as it passes right up the Alabama-Georgia state line. Now, once it makes it up to Tennessee, it's going to curve off or start curving off to the northwest after it passes East Alabama. And by the time it gets up into northwest Alabama, it'll pass south of Chattanooga and then up into Tennessee, probably going to work pretty close to Nashville as it moves through the state of Tennessee. But as it gets further to the north and northwest from us, then the effects will start to lessen across East Alabama and West Georgia. And at least for now, it looks like Friday night is going to be okay weather-wise. Now, what we don't know about Friday night is how much damage do we sustain tomorrow night into Friday morning. And when I talk about damage, I'm talking about damage to infrastructure. I'm talking about power lines, power poles, trees down across roads, blocking roads. There could be some structure damage from falling trees. And those are all questions we cannot answer right now because we don't know with great certainty exactly what kind of damage we're going to end up with when this thing is all said and done. However, if we do have widespread damage across East Alabama and West Georgia, then that could hamper things. as far as Friday night plans are concerned with high school football. So right now, the forecast doesn't look bad, but we don't know what kind of damage we're going to end up with. So keep that in mind. I don't think we can change anything for Friday night because we just don't know what's going to happen. But keep that in mind when you're doing your planning as we go down this hurricane path over the next 48 hours. It's going to be a rough ride for the next 48 hours across East Alabama, West Georgia, and then the farther you go into the state of Georgia along that actual track and then to the east of the track, that's where the most significant wind is going to be. And, of course, major metropolitan areas oftentimes will receive a lot more damage than rural areas because of all the structures and there's so many people packed into a smaller area. Unfortunately, you get more injuries and that sort of thing in large areas such as Atlanta. Atlanta's probably in the 50 to 60, 65 mile per hour peak wind gust area. And I expect it's going to be a mess in Atlanta, probably from about midnight, maybe 10, 11, 12 o'clock tomorrow night, all the way through Friday morning. Atlanta's not going to be a place where you're going to want to be. Well, I mean, that's that says, I don't even have to say anything else about that. But if you're up here in northeast Georgia, lots of folks tuning in here wanting to know what's going to happen up here in northeast Georgia. Really, we haven't changed our thinking much about northeast Georgia, even though the center of the storm has shifted the track. The expected track has shifted a little bit to the west. It really is not going to make a hill of beans to us up here. We're still well within that right flanking quadrant of the storm. We did host a weather webinar this afternoon with the National Weather Service out of Peachtree City for all of our local officials here in White County, Georgia. And during that webinar, the meteorologist that was doing the webinar pointed out several things as far as northeast Georgia is concerned, and they're talking about wind gust of 60 plus miles per hour, even up here in northeast Georgia, and rain totals, maybe in the 10, 11, 12 inch range before this is all said and done. Now that's total, including what we got today. So another 5, 6, or 7 inches during tomorrow night, and Friday morning is certainly plausible. But the problem with that is it's all going to come within a relatively short period of time. So we could be looking at some flash flooding issues up here in northeast Georgia. Same thing for East Alabama and West Georgia. Flooding may actually end up being the big story, the legacy of Helene by the time all of this is over with. And again, understand, folks, with that much water, it's just not going to take much wind gust to bring down trees. So 10, 15, even 20 mile per hour winds can certainly bring down trees when the ground is completely saturated. And that's what we're looking at across the entire region as we get into this hurricane event. Across East Alabama and West Georgia, 4 to 8 inches of rain will be plausible. Up here in the northeast Georgia mountains, we're talking probably in the 10, 11, 12, 13 inch range is what we expect to see when all is said and done. So, having said all of that, let me say this also. Hold on. Turn my radio down. It's getting a little loud. Don't focus on the exact center of circulation of this hurricane. Understand a hurricane is not like a tornado. A tornado typically affects just a small area, 100, 200 yards wide. It may track a half a mile or up to a mile. That's typically the tornadoes we see in Alabama and Georgia during the spring and during the fall. Hurricanes are much different. Yes, you have a center of circulation, but the effects are far-reaching from that center of circulation. And in this particular case, this storm could actually stretch out 2, 3, maybe even 400 miles from one side to the other. So you can understand this is going to affect not only East Alabama, Georgia. It will also affect South Carolina, North Carolina. Eventually, it moves up into Tennessee, Indiana, Kentucky. I mean, this is going to be a huge storm. Now, you don't have hurricane force winds that far out, but certainly it's going to be a very far-reaching storm. So don't focus on exactly where that eye is located or where the center of circulation is located, because if you're 200 miles away, you're going to feel some effects from this storm. So keep that in mind as we move through this event over the next couple of days. All right, so I'm going to go over here to the chat room. Well, I'll tell you what, I've got a couple of products I want to show you. So there's the cone. And you can see the hurricane warnings down there across the Big Bend area of Florida, and those warnings extend inland all the way up almost to middle Georgia. We have the hurricane warnings, and then we have tropical storm warnings north of that all the way to the Tennessee state line. Every county in the state of Georgia is under either a tropical storm warning or a hurricane warning at this hour. That's pretty amazing. And then in East Alabama, we have one tier of counties down to the Columbus, Phoenix City area that's under the tropical storm warning, and then we have hurricane warnings for extreme southeast Alabama, Eufaula, Dothan, down in the Wiregrass area of southeast Alabama. So that's the expected track. If you don't understand what you're looking at, that's the expected track of the hurricane. The white cone area, that doesn't say this is the only area that's going to receive effects. What the cone is telling you is that's the margin of error in the forecast track. The center of circulation could track anywhere within that cone, and then the National Hurricane Center will split that, and that's where the official track will be. And you can see once it gets up into Tennessee, maybe southern Indiana, Missouri, it's going to turn back to the left because of that low pressure that's sitting over Mississippi and Alabama. It's going to interact with Helene and pull her back over to the left or back to the northwest. It's called the Fujiwara effect. We've learned all about that in the last 24 hours or so as well. So that is the forecast track. Here's the expected rainfall. Now, this is the percentage of probability for excessive rainfall. You'll notice northeast Georgia is a 4 out of 4. That's as high as it gets. So it's almost guaranteed that we are going to have excessive rainfall up here in the northeast Georgia mountains. Then right down there where the hurricane's going to make landfall, we have a 4 out of 4 as well. The rest of you across Georgia and East Alabama, you're in a 3 out of 4 category. That is the tan or reddish color. And then the yellow is a 2 out of 4. So about a 50-50 chance at seeing excessive rainfall. And I think they're measuring this on 6 inches or more, I think is what that scale is set on. So now here's the rainfall total forecast. And again, this is going to encompass all of the rain that we have received. But you get up there in, and you're going to have to excuse me, I got to look a little closer here. You get up there in northeast Georgia, and it's showing some 12 to 14 inches up in the mountainous region of northeast Georgia. I think 14 is probably overdoing it a little bit, but 10, 11, 12 inches of total rainfall up here in the mountains, certainly plausible. And then down across West Georgia, East Alabama, we're likely in that 4 to 8 inch range before all is said and done. Then one other stop. This is the Saffir-Simpson scale. Right now, we're predicting this, or the Hurricane Center is forecasting Helene to go to a Category 4. That's 130 to 156 mile per hour winds. And again, there's a handful of models that suggest we maybe even make Category 5, which is 157 miles per hour. Now, for you folks down there in South Georgia that's watching us this evening, Southeast Alabama, South Georgia, and Northwest Florida, if you're anywhere around Apalachicola, now, Panama City, I think you're okay, even though you probably ought to be a little more nervous now than you have been because of that shift back to the west. If we were to get another shift to the west by 20 or 30 miles, now Panama City starts to come into play. So if you're down there at PC, pay attention to what's going on. But if you're anywhere right around Apalachicola or to the east of Apalachicola, and we still predict a Category 4 by the first thing tomorrow morning, you need to get out of there. Now, you don't want to mess with Category 4. You're going to have structure failure at Category 4. And if we go to Category 5, that's catastrophic. There's not much that's going to withstand a Category 4 or a Category 5 hurricane. You just need to get out of the way. On further inland, and I'm talking about Donaldsonville, Dothan, maybe up there around Albany, if it begins to look certain that we're going to make landfall at Cat 4 or Cat 5, I think you need to get out of Dodge as well. Because the stronger it is when it makes landfall, the stronger it's going to be once it pushes inland. If it's moving, 16, 17, 18 miles per hour forward motion, then it's going to punch inland a long way with stronger winds. It's going to take time for it to lose its intensity. So, right now we do have hurricane warnings in the Albany area. But, when those warnings first went out, we thought we were probably going to be looking at a Category 3 at landfall and Category 1 by the time it got up there to Albany. Now, if we increase that to a Category 4, then you may be looking at a Category 2 in southwest Georgia and southeast Alabama. We go to Cat 5, you see where I'm going. You could be looking, excuse me, you could be looking at a Category 3 in the Albany, Americus, Dothan area, and you could certainly be feeling some Category 1 wind as far north as Columbus, or maybe even a little further north than that. So it's gonna be interesting to watch how this thing unfolds for the next 24 hours. And the stronger it is when it makes landfall, the further inland those stronger winds are going to push as this storm comes up the Alabama-Georgia coast. So I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just being for real. I'm telling you what the possibilities are. Now, is there a chance we get a bust on this? Well, that's always an outside chance. I don't think that's going to be the case here. There's certainly a case or a chance that we don't get as strong as we possibly could. But this one looks pretty for real. And I think you folks need to make sure you take it for real if you're in the path of this hurricane. And that pretty much includes East Alabama and the entire state of Georgia, and at least the northern half of the state of Florida. I mean, from Tampa north, this thing is just going to wallop you guys over there on the west coast. The storm surge is just going to be incredible. So keep all of that in mind as we move forward the next couple of days or next 48 hours. If it really starts to look good that we're going to have a 4 or 5 at landfall, you folks in southwest Georgia need to leave. If you were down there during Hurricane Michael, you understand what I'm saying, because landfall was just about the same. It was Mexico Beach, which was just a little bit to the west of Apalachicola, and the intensity, that Michael ended up being a Category 5. We thought it was a 4, but after they surveyed the damage, they took it to a 5. And you know that southwest Georgia was absolutely leveled during Hurricane Michael. And though I'm trying to be a little cautious here, there is a chance, though it may not be a very high chance, there is a chance we could be looking at the same thing here. So I don't want you to lose sight of that if you're down there in southwest Georgia. I would say anywhere from Columbus to Macon, probably in south. Columbus to Macon and south in Georgia. In Alabama, just the southeastern corner. You need to really watch every update that comes along and follow the advice of your local emergency management offices. If your local county EMA is telling you to evacuate, don't question that. Don't say, oh, this ain't going to be nothing, this is inconvenient. Don't do that. because most people who do that and who ride these type storms out will tell you they'll never, ever, ever do it again because it's horrifying and you don't want to be in it. Now, if we keep this at Category 1 or 2 at landfall at Apalachicola, then structural damage in South Georgia probably won't be that bad. You're going to lose power, and it may be for days, so it depends on what your tolerance level is of not having any electricity for 3 to 5 days, because that'll certainly be possible. But if this joker comes up in here at Cat 3, 4, or 5, you need to seriously consider getting out of Dodge. Go west. That's the best idea because you won't have to go far. Or go northwest, back up into Alabama. All right, let's see. That's all of the graphics I've got for you. That's back on the radar. I'm going to take the radar full screen, and I'm going to come over here and answer questions. This is my favorite part of this, that we're doing a little Q&A here for about 10 or 15 minutes. So if you have any questions, now's the time to throw it out there. There is my Astrid DeWeaver. Astrid is our animal control operations and training director up here in White County, Georgia at Animal Control, which is also one of the divisions I cover. Good to see you in here, Astrid. So Paul is asking the question, do I think this will be as bad as Opal or Eloise in the 5 Points area of Alabama? At the moment, no. I don't think it will rival Opal in 5 Points, Alabama. However, if we continue to see the forecast track shift to the west, and if it does end up shifting back over toward Panama City or maybe even Seagrove or Seaside, then that's going to definitely put East Alabama on the right side, or wrong side, if you will, of the track. Then I think, yes, we could be in that Opal category. Hope that answered your question. Hey, Linda. All right, folks. Also, again, William's asking the question, what time is it going to hit Randolph County? Now, understand, this is not like a thunderstorm or a tornado where you go from relatively calm weather to boom, it's on top of you. The hurricane wind and rain will slowly increase throughout the day. You're going to start feeling the effects of the hurricane well before we get landfall down there at Apalachicola if you're in East Alabama and West Georgia. The wind will be breezy in the morning. It'll slowly increase as we go throughout the day. The rain will be light in the morning. It'll slowly increase as we go throughout the day. The height of the possible highest winds, I think, will come between about 10 p.m. tomorrow night and through probably mid-morning Friday or noon-ish. That's for all of East Alabama and West Georgia. Of course, the further south you are, the effects could start sooner. If you're down there around Columbus, Phoenix City, then, we may be looking at 8 p.m. when you start to get into the height of the storm tomorrow night. Roanoke, maybe around 10 or 11. If you're further north, up there in Cherokee County or over in Paulding County, Georgia, it may be, midnight, 1 a.m. before the winds get to their peak intensity. But it's not like we say, okay, hold on, in 10 minutes it's going to be here. It's a slow increase throughout the day, and then we get into the height of this thing probably around or between 10 p.m. and midnight tomorrow night. And then we're looking at a good 6 to 8 hours of occasional wind gust, probably 35, 40 miles per hour in East Alabama and West Georgia. Then if you get on the right side of the track of the storm, wherever that exactly ends up being, you could be looking at wind gusts higher, up in the 60 mile per hour range. Lake Harding, you're in East Alabama, right there on the Alabama-Georgia state line. Part of you is in East Alabama, part of you is in West Georgia, so It's safe to stay there, but be aware of what's going on. Tornado threat. Now, I'm surprised you guys aren't asking about that. Tornado threat is not going to be especially high, especially if you're west of wherever the track ends up being. If you're east of the track or along the track, then there's not a zero chance. There is a chance, but the chance is going to be pretty low. This is not. I don't think this is going to be a tornado-producing hurricane. However, we had a surprise tornado warning up here this afternoon. Of course, what we had today has nothing to do with the hurricane. That's the cold front that's moving through. But we did have a tornado develop in extreme southeast White County, and the Weather Service couldn't get the warning out quick enough. It was already in Habersham County, and so the National Weather Service up at Greenville-Spartanburg issued a tornado warning for Habersham County this afternoon, and at one point, almost 10,000 customers without power over in Habersham County. I did talk to the EMA director over there, Miss Lynn Smith, and at the time I talked to her, she didn't know of any significant damage, but I think they did find a little bit of damage thereafter. But yeah, we did have a tornado up here northeast Georgia today. But I don't think the hurricane's going to be much of a tornado producer, and at least not here. Now, East Georgia, West South Carolina, there may be a few there, especially down on the southeast Georgia coast, could see a few as well. Will Montgomery be affected? Montgomery's going to be breezy. You may have some showers, but I wouldn't look for anything significant in Montgomery on the current forecast track. Amy, are we looking for just rain in Heflin or possibly more? Amy, you're under a tropical storm warning, and you're in East Alabama. East Alabama and West Georgia could see wind gusts of 35, 40 miles per hour during the peak of this, and you could be looking at rain totals in the 4 to 8 inch category, which could cause some significant flooding. So, Amy, the potential is there for much more than just rain. You could be looking at some pretty significant weather. Again, it'll rain off and on all day tomorrow, but the height of all of this, starting probably sometime after 10 p.m. tomorrow night in Heflin. Well, unless y'all are planning on going to school tomorrow night, I don't think Roanoke needs to cancel school. Tomorrow, probably just kind of have to wait and see what happens tomorrow night as to whether or not school should run on Friday. Now, up here in northeast Georgia, most of the schools have gone ahead and called it for tomorrow and Friday. But you got to understand, we're in a much different situation up here in the mountains than you guys are in East Alabama and West Georgia. So they decided to take the course of least regret and go ahead and pull the plug on school tomorrow and Friday up in northeast Georgia. What is expected in Randolph County, Chambers County, and Clay County? I'm assuming you guys joined me late. All of these places you guys are asking about are in East Alabama. So here it comes again. East Alabama, West Georgia. You're under a tropical storm warning, which means that within the next 36 hours, you can expect winds gusting to 35, 40 miles per hour, which will bring down some trees, and possibly flooding rains in the order of 4 to 8 inches, which could cause some localized flooding. So there is a decent chance here that we could be looking at power outages and some road closed because of trees and because of flooding. The further east you go from East Alabama into West Georgia, the greater that risk is going to be, and the higher those winds are going to be. Kenny, in a tent at Wind Creek State Park on Lake Martin. Yeah, I don't think I would do that. I think it'll be windy enough at Wind Creek State Park to cause issues with a tent. How bad was the weather today? Up here in northeast Georgia, I mean, we got a lot of rain, and we did have a tornado form in the extreme south east corner of White County, Georgia. That's the county I live in and work in. And then it quickly moved into Habersham County. They issued a tornado warning for Habersham County. And again, I talked to the EMA director over there about 20 minutes after the warning was issued. She wasn't aware of anything, any major damage at that time, but that was pretty soon after the warning was issued, so I hadn't talked to her since. I hadn't heard of any major damage in Habersham, but it wouldn't surprise me. That was a pretty nasty storm. Thank you, Linda McGee. Thanks, Joanne in Bowden. Troup County, you're in West Georgia. Same as what I've just finished talking about. Hey, Summer, you asked about Panama City last night. I still think you're okay. But this is making me a little bit nervous because we keep seeing that shift to the west. So keep an eye on it. I wouldn't change my plans. I wouldn't do anything. If you're already down there, I wouldn't leave. I wouldn't do any of that. But the trend is west. So stay abreast. Ha. Y'all see what I did there? Yes, it will be a long night tomorrow night, Paula. I'm normally an 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, but we are activating our emergency operations center to full staff at noon tomorrow. So I'm going in late tomorrow. I've got to be there at noon, and I plan on being there through the duration, which will probably be about 36 hours. That's if we don't have recovery at the end of all of this. If we do, then it'll be a lot worse than that. But tomorrow night will be a long night. Chambers County and Lee County is in East Alabama. Melissa, the tornado chance is not zero, but it's not very significant either. I'm not going to tell you that there can't be a spin-up tornado anywhere in Georgia or East Alabama tomorrow night and into early Friday morning, but it does not appear that this is going to be a tornado-producing hurricane for East Alabama, West Georgia. Now, over in East Georgia, West South Carolina, probably from Augusta down to Hilton Head, Savannah, Brunswick, places like that, especially down there right along the Atlantic, would stand a better chance at seeing a spin-up tornado or two. As the hurricane makes landfall, it's going to continue to try to live off of Atlantic moisture and Gulf moisture, so it'll pull some of that up from the Atlantic, and then when it gets up there on the north end of the circulation and starts to get to spinning back to the northwest, that's where the tornadoes would occur. Not to say we can't have a quick spin-up tornado along the center of circulation. Certainly can, but this doesn't look like it's going to be a big tornado producer. 6:30 tomorrow, like in the morning or tomorrow night? If you're leaving at 6:30 in the morning, you're good. 6:30 tomorrow night, you're gonna be driving through some rain and some gusty winds. That line is the track. Oh my goodness! Well, hang on a minute here. That just moved. Hang on, folks. Now understand that track that you're looking at on my screen is not the official National Hurricane Center track. It's generally pretty close. And I'm just looking. I'm looking at the official National Hurricane Center website, and they have not updated that like that. So for the moment, we're going to call that bad data. I will keep an eye on that, though. I'm looking at the official National Hurricane website right now, and they're still showing it as of 7 p.m., and that's going to be the latest update. They're still showing that track to be right along the Alabama-Georgia state line. So I think what popped on my screen was bad data. Good eye, Remy. I'm glad you saw that. Glenn, Georgia, you're in West Georgia. Hey, Brandy, good eye for you, too. I think that was bad data, because I'm looking at the 7 p.m. update for the National Hurricane Center, and it does not look like it moved. How bad will it get in Roanoke County? I'm assuming you mean Roanoke, Alabama, and you're in East Alabama. Thank you, Jeffrey. Jacksonville, Alabama. You're not in the tropical storm warning, but you're just outside of it. So I think you get breezy and certainly going to be rainy, but I think your winds stay below tropical storm force. Yeah, Sam, for those of you who follow me and know this already, because I talk about it all the time, but Sam is stationed at the Marine Logistics Base down in Albany, Georgia. So that's who I was preaching to just a few moments ago. But she has agreed to do live weather coverage from her front yard. Daddy's probably not going to go for that. We'll see. Megan, I can't make a call on Roanoke schools. I think tomorrow's okay. And I think the best thing to do is wait and see tomorrow night if we start to have power outages and trees blocking roads, then that decision would be made, I'm sure. Well, I mean, Opelika is further south, and Opelika will be closer to where the storm makes landfall, but you're still several hundred miles away. So we're not looking at hurricane weather in Opelika, but you could be looking at pretty strong tropical storm winds. You know, Opelika to see a 45, 50 mile per hour wind gust would not surprise me in Opelika. Also understand, on top of the tropical storm warning for East Alabama and West Georgia, you're also under a flash flood watch, which means that flooding will be possible along with tropical storm force winds in Cherokee, Cleburne, Randolph, Chambers, Lee, Carroll, Hurd, Troop, Harris, Meriwether, and Coweta of our coverage area. You're under a tropical storm warning, and you're under a flash flood watch. From Columbus to Macon south, you're under a tropical storm warning until you get down to approximately Albany or maybe Americus, Cordele, and then you go under a hurricane warning all the way down to the Florida state line. From that Columbus to Macon line north, it is tropical storm warning all the way to the Tennessee state line. Every single county in the state of Georgia is either under a tropical storm warning, a hurricane watch, or hurricane warning. I'm sorry, hurricane warning. They did away with the watches. So every square inch of Georgia is either under a tropical storm warning or hurricane warning. That's never happened. That's the unprecedented part of this whole thing. Let's see here. Any other questions? Game was moved from Ashland to Cottondale at 6:30. Yeah, it's probably going to be pretty windy in Cottondale. 6:30 tomorrow night. My wife is going to the Gulf of Mexico on Friday. Will she make it back alive? On Friday, yeah. It'll be well north of the Gulf region on Friday. Thank you, Sonia Holloman. I appreciate those kind words. Thanks, Haley. Chris, we're probably looking after midnight. I think it is a pre-dawn event here in White County, probably continuing through noon, maybe early afternoon. I think it's 7 a.m. Friday morning. The storm should be somewhere in the Rome or maybe closer to the Alabama state line as a tropical storm around 7 a.m. Friday morning. Frederick was horrible, Anya. Thank you. Thank you, Terry. Kelly, I took that red line off because I cannot verify that. I can tell you that looking at the official National Hurricane Center, that it's not showing that line, and this is the 7 o'clock update that we're looking at. There it is. We're still in the same place. And those updates, the next update won't be till 11 p.m., so I think that was bad data that we had on the screen. Charlotte, North Carolina. You're going to get some rain up there. Probably be a little breezy, but I wouldn't expect anything much more than that. Actually, Charlotte, no, it's going to be an overnight thing. I don't think you have anything to worry about as far as tornadoes are concerned. But it's going to be breezy, and you got some rain up there. Well, your timing... Let me see if I can get that up on the screen right quick. You're looking at landfall around dark-ish tomorrow evening in Apalachicola, Florida. And then it will continue to move north throughout the night. You're probably looking at it being lateral with East Alabama and West Georgia maybe 3 a.m. Friday morning, 2 a.m., 3 a.m. Friday morning. And then even or lateral with Rome, Georgia, maybe 7 a.m. Friday morning. Bear with me. I'm going to see if I can get because it's not just the wind is not going to be centered just around the center of the storm. You're going to feel that way earlier. So let me see if I can get this over here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. We're just going to do this on the fly. Okay, I'll tidy that up and make it look better later. So it's time like these, folks, where you really would do yourself a favor by watching us on your big screen TV off of YouTube, because it's so much easier to see. I know this kind of stuff's hard to see on your phone, but at least turn your phone sideways and you'll get a much bigger picture. But watch us on your big screen TV off of YouTube. You can see this kind of stuff a whole lot better. All right, so this is the earliest reasonable arrival time of tropical storm force winds. Tropical storm force winds are 39 miles per hour or higher, up to 73. So between 39 and 73, the earliest reasonable arrival time of those winds. That doesn't mean that's when it's going to arrive, but it would be the earliest we could possibly see those kind of winds. And we're not talking sustained, we're talking gust. So the earliest we would see that in East Alabama, according to this graphic, would probably be in the 4 to 5 p.m., maybe 6 p.m. range. Well, Columbus, probably 4 to 5. And then right across East Alabama, we're probably looking at closer to 6, 7, or 8 p.m. tomorrow evening. It'll be breezy before that, but that would be the earliest we could expect tropical storm force winds. So maybe that answered your question. And then as we go throughout the night, we could see an increase in that, gusting up to 45 miles per hour. And then as the sun comes up on Friday, I think the storm will be pulling away from us and the winds will start coming back down. Thursday night into Friday morning. Alexander City, you're not in the tropical storm warning, so you're probably in the 25 to 30 mile per hour wind gust. Valley, Alabama, you're in Chambers County. You're under a tropical storm warning. 35 to 40 mile per hour wind gust, maybe 45, and you're under a flash flood watch. Between 6 to 8 inches of rain are possible. Paula, no. Speeding up would cause it to be worse. The fact that it's going to be moving almost 20 miles per hour, which, by the way, is fast for a hurricane. The fact that it's moving that fast already is what's going to cause the wind to punch so far inland. If it was a slow-moving hurricane, then it would have more time to deteriorate before it gets up into East Alabama and West Georgia. So we don't want it to speed up. If it got much faster than what it's expected to do, then it could bring hurricane force winds up into East Alabama and West Georgia. So we don't want that to happen. If anything, we want it to slow down. But then if it were to slow down, that increases the rain and flooding threat even more than what we've already got. Waycross, Georgia. Hello, Sweetwater Baptist Church. It'll get pretty rough down there in Waycross, too. You guys are closer to where I would expect to see a few tornadoes. I'm going to say this, folks. I mean, across East Alabama and West Georgia, could there be power outages and trees down? Absolutely. But we're not talking hurricane weather. I mean, we're not talking about 100-mile-per-hour winds in East Alabama and West Georgia. And that's closer to what we had during Opal. Could we get a few gusts over 30, 40, 50 miles per hour? Yeah, we could. But we're not talking about major structure damage from wind or anything like that. So don't let the anxiety get a hold of you here. This is not going to be a catastrophic event for East Alabama or West Georgia. No, Cody, absolutely not. You think Trump's a mess. You put me in Washington, D.C. But thank you for the offer, Cody. Hey, Darrell Brown over on the West Bank in Whiteley, Alabama. Yeah, see, so Waycross is on the right side of the expected track of the storm. You're out there in that area where we could see a few tornadoes. Certainly going to see some pretty gusty winds. You're in that hurricane. I think Waycross is under that. Hang on a second. You know why they call it Waycross, right? Because it's way across yonder. And it is, trust me. All right, so Waycross is under tropical storm warning. So most probable wind gust in Waycross, probably in the most of the time you're looking at 25 to 35 mile per hour wind gust, but an occasional gust to 55 miles per hour is possible. But if the storm continues, if the track continues shifting to the west, that's helping you in Waycross. Leslie, I think you'll be fine at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. We're not even at landfall by that time, but the effects will already be here by that time. But it won't be like tropical storm force at 4 p.m., I don't think. Taylor's Crossroads. Franklin, Georgia's in West Georgia. Cragford is not under a warning at this time. Randolph, Cherokee, Cleburne, Randolph, Chambers, Lee, in our coverage area, is under the tropical storm warning. In Georgia, in our coverage area, Carroll, Hurd, Troop, Harris, Meriwether, and Coweta. Now, the rest of the state of Georgia is either under a tropical storm warning or hurricane warning. I'm talking about literally the entire state of Georgia. So Jennifer's asking about Panama City. Do I think Panama City is okay? At the moment, I think you are. I still, even though we've seen a shift to the west with the track, I still think Panama City is okay. If we get much more of a shift to the west, then you just need to listen to your local officials down there. If they start telling you to evacuate, especially off the beachfront, then do what they suggest. These folks are emergency managers. They've studied this. They've lived through it many, many times. They have the data. They know exactly what the water level is going to do at different locations. They know what they're talking about. So if they start suggesting evacuation, and if there's any chance you're going to be in danger from this, they will. If they start suggesting you evacuate, then by all means do so. But at the moment, I don't think you're in any danger in Panama City. If we don't go any further west with the track, it'll be a little breezy. There'll be some showers from time to time, but you won't be looking at hurricane conditions. Dennis, I think there's a chance we could see another small shift to the west, but here's the deal. We're right back where we started about 4 days ago when we started forecasting this thing. You'll remember the first landfall forecast was Apalachicola. Well, we drifted to the east, and then for the last 4 or 5 updates, we've slowly drifted back to the west to a point right there at Apalachicola. I think that's where we're going to be. But now that the storm is out in the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico and will pick up forward motion and strength, I think we'll get a much better handle on exactly where it's going to land. And I think it's going to be right there around Apalachicola. County Road 43 in Whiteley, Alabama, over on the east side of the West Bank. You're under tropical storm warning. So I think, 30 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts are plausible. Could you see an occasional 45? Yes, you could. You're also under a flash flood watch, so flooding could become an issue. You could get between 6 and 8 inches of rain across Randolph County. So there is a wind threat and there is a flooding threat. But you are on the right side, or the good side of the storm. You're to the left of that center of circulation. What you don't want to be is along the track or to the right of the track. That's where the worst weather will be. So I think Wadley is going to be fine at the moment. If the track were to shift much further west, all that could change. But for right now, I think Wadley's going to be okay. Will there be power outages? There probably will be scattered power outages. And there may be a few trees down across roads, but I don't think we're looking at anything widespread in Wadley. Angie, this is probably not going to be a tornado maker. If there are tornadoes associated with this hurricane, I think it's back toward Waycross. From Waycross back out to Brunswick. This is in Georgia. Maybe back up towards Savannah, Hilton Head. And then right up the eastern side of the state of Georgia and the western side of the state of South Carolina. That's where the greatest tornado threat's going to be, and even there it's not going to be very high. Across East Alabama and West Georgia, the tornado threat, though it's not zero, it will be relatively low. Producer Tracy is, I think, probably watching, what time is it? Hannity. You watching Hannity? Yeah. See, I knew it. And then that's my fault. Let's see. James in Auburn. What about the Auburn weather? You're a little further south, so you may see a little more wind down there in the Auburn-Opelika area. I think 35 to 45 wind gust during the peak of all of this will be plausible. Could you see a gust up to an occasional gust to 50, 55 miles per hour? You could. And you're also under a flash flood watch, so flooding could be an issue down there in the Auburn Opelika area as well. All of East Alabama and West Georgia, listen to this. Your window of opportunity for the strongest wind, and I'm talking about from the I-65 corridor in Alabama, which is right up the center of the state of Alabama, over to the track of the storm, whether that's back toward Atlanta or back toward LaGrange. Your window of opportunity for the strongest winds will come after 10 p.m. tomorrow night. And that window will stay open probably through about 10 a.m. Friday morning or maybe noon-ish Friday. During that window, there's going to be a period of about 6 hours where the peak winds will be possible. Not saying you're going to have peak winds. I'm just saying that's where the window of opportunity will be. Basically from 10 p.m. tomorrow night through 10 p.m. Friday morning, perhaps maybe toward noon on Friday. And it won't be windy like that the entire time. There will be, within that window of opportunity, about 6 hours where you will have occasional gust. 35, 45 in Alabama, potentially up to 55, maybe even an occasional 60 in West Georgia. I hope that answered that question. Hey, Carrie Futch. Boy, he's going to be in for it the next couple of days. Hanging out down there in southwest Georgia. Boy, you and Jonathan Jones just didn't know what y'all was getting into, did you? You about to find out. Y'all need me, holla. Well, good, Martha. I hope you're not scared, and I hope that we help you with that. Look, weather anxiety is a deal. I mean, it's a real thing. A lot of people suffer from that. I know that. And, here's the thing. Weather was happening when the light switch was turned on, and weather will be happening when the light switch is turned off. It's part of life. The way you protect yourself and your family from severe weather is by knowledge, situational awareness, understand what the possibilities are, and know what's going on around you so you can take action to protect yourself. It's really simple. Take action. Have that safe place. Know where it's at. Have your supplies there. Have a good way of receiving severe weather information so that you can take shelter when severe weather warnings are issued for your area. Know how to find your town on a map, because we all use maps. I mean, look, there's a map on the screen. We all use maps to show you and explain to you where the weather's coming from and where the weather's going. So you have to be able to read a map. You have to be able to pick out your town on a map. You have to understand which way is north, south, east, and west. You have to know which direction the weather's coming from. You have to understand things like tornadoes typically are only about 100 to 200 yards wide, and they typically only last about a half a mile in the southeastern United States. Now, if that happens to happen in your front yard, you got a problem. But just because there's a tornado in town X doesn't mean it's going to wipe out the entire county. Odds are it won't even affect you. Those are the kind of things you have to understand to be able to handle the weather anxiety and protect yourself from the effects of severe weather. It's just called knowledge, and that's what we do here on Dr. Don's Weather. We give you the tools you need to stay safe during severe weather. That's a good idea, Leslie. Preach it. We can all play a vital role in making sure everybody is safe during severe weather. Call your friends, your family, your loved ones. Text them, call them, email them. I'd rather you bug them and they be alive than you not bug them and they're not here. It's pretty simple. Make sure they're aware of what's going on. All right, let's see what time we got here. All right, so we are coming up on 8:11 Central, 9:11 Eastern. We're going to go to about 9:15. So let me recap one more time. I know some of you are just joining us. Let me recap one more time what we're looking at here. And then I got to go lay down because the next 36 hours is going to be rough. So let's go back to the graphics and let's start right there. So there's the latest forecast track from the National Hurricane Center. And we expect this storm to make it to Category 3. There are some models now suggesting it will go to Category 4. And yet other models, a handful of them, that suggest that this thing may make it to Category 5 before making landfall. We're going to stick with Category 4. Because that's going to be the official forecast, I think, at 11 p.m. when it comes out. And that will happen sometime late tomorrow afternoon or early tomorrow evening around Apalachicola, Florida. Then that thing's going to run right up the Alabama-Georgia state line. And as it moves north, of course, it will lose its intensity. It won't be a Category 3 or 4 by the time it gets to Columbus or Lynette, or Valley, or Lafayette, or Roanoke, or LaGrange, or Carrollton. It will most likely be a tropical storm by the time it makes it that far north. That's why East Alabama and West Georgia is under a tropical storm warning, because that's what we expect the conditions to be when the storm moves through your area. So what does a tropical storm warning mean? It means that you could see wind gusts between 39 miles per hour and 73 miles per hour. But in this particular case, we expect the wind gust to be no more than 40 or 45 miles per hour. I mean, an outside gust of 50 is certainly possible. The further west you go into Georgia, that becomes more likely as you get closer to the track of where the storm is actually going to go. So it's going to be a very windy and rainy. It's going to be rainy tomorrow, and the wind is going to slowly be on the increase tomorrow. Understand, this storm is massive. I'm going to start feeling the effects from it way before it even makes landfall down Apalachicola. So you'll start feeling the effects of this tomorrow afternoon. Wind will be breezy, and it'll get a little more breezy. It's going to slowly increase throughout the afternoon. Rain will as well. You'll get those spiral bands that'll feed back across East Alabama and West Georgia. Then as we get into the overnight, I think after 10 p.m. tomorrow night, that window opens for peak winds, which could be in that 30, 35, 40, 45 mile per hour range. And there will be a 6-hour period there where gust to that to that level will be possible. And then after about 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, that window will close, 10, 11, 12 o'clock tomorrow, and the storm will pull off to our northwest, and weather conditions will start to improve on Friday morning. Think by Friday night, weather-wise, we're fine for high school football. Weather-wise, we're fine for high school football. But what kind of damage is left behind? So do we have power outages? Do we have trees across roads? Does the venue even have power? These are all questions you can't answer right now because we don't know exactly what we're going to get as far as damage is concerned. At the moment, I would not expect widespread tree and power line damage across East Alabama or West Georgia, but just a small shift to the west could put you either in the track of the storm or now on the right side of the storm. And in those areas, I think there could be widespread power outages that could take 3 to 5 days to recover from. And I think that on the given track, if it doesn't move anymore at all, I think probably from Greenville, Georgia, Noonan, Georgia, down to Greenville, east, including the city of Atlanta, is in that area where we could see widespread power outages and widespread tree damage that could take 3 to 5 days to recover from. So the $64 million question here is, does that track move further west? Because if it does, that could change your forecast tremendously. We're going to watch that for you throughout tonight and tomorrow. I'll have more information for you as we go throughout the day. I'll be back in here in the morning with your prime time. Actually, we probably will just do a live update tomorrow morning instead of a prime time forecast. So sometime 7, 8-ish in the morning, look for another live update here on Dr. Don's Weather. Hope that you all have a good night. Get a good night's rest. Tomorrow night may be a long one across Alabama and Georgia, especially in the state of Georgia on the track that we have right now, and of course, northwest Florida, where the storm is going to make landfall. Have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday. Good Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. I'll see you back in here first thing tomorrow morning with a live update on Hurricane Helene from Dr. Don's Weather. Good night, y'all.